Thank you, Tom. Okay, so let me just share my screen. I'm originally from Colombia, from Medellin, and I used to be an athlete, won hundreds of gold medals in athletics. And I love Latin music, dancing. I'm married, and I have a 7-year-old son, and we're expecting another baby boy in July. And yeah, I'm pretty passionate about server-side web development, web design, and lead-edge technologies like machine learning and artificial intelligence. So good. Now, since you know a little bit about me, let's move to my content. So we're gonna talk about Knative, Cloudrun. I'm gonna go through some features and use cases, and I will show what exactly mean these in code, okay? Now, since I wanna know who is in the room, so it is okay for you guys if you just answer that little question, okay? I want to know if you're more into more into the business, you're more interested about how can this benefit your company, your business, or you're more into technical, you're more like a developer, a technical person. So, and just please do the survey and send the results, and that will give me a little bit of overview of who is in the room. Good. So that's good. I see like we have a pretty technical audience. 78% it's more interested into the technical aspects, and 5% is business. That's okay. Thank you guys for that. And the reason I'm asking that question is because it's always important to know who are you talking to, okay? So now my question here is we want to run serverless applications in the cloud, and I want that to be easy. Yeah. Sorry, that was the results of the poll. There we go. Now, I want that to be easy. Thank you. So, and then if you're coming from the business side, okay, or if you're coming from the technical side, those are things that you gotta take into account. Okay. So, for example, if your technical is when I do serverless, I'm limited by some of the vendor implementation and features. So, we see, for example, AWS has lambdas, maybe they have support for some languages, maybe Google doesn't. So you're limited by the vendor implementation, okay? And that could be a problem, yeah? The other thing is, if I wanna move to another cloud vendor, as we saw before, if you using a SDK specifically for AWS and making use of those functions, you cannot just copy and paste straightforward that cloud function, yeah? So it's not as easy as it is, yeah? And the other problem or the other thing is the experience of the development. So think about it, you're developing your application, you wanna test your application, you wanna test that your API is working as expected, and you don't want to, you wanna wait to do that in your laptop while you're working in your house and not need to yet deploy that cloud function into your vendor provider. So how can you improve that experience, okay? Good. Now, very quickly from the business point of view, the cost of running, you wanna run different type of workloads in your cloud. And sometimes for companies go serverless, it's not also an easy journey. And so the question is, yeah, how can that be more easy, yeah? Also, when it's also difficult sometimes for some companies build teams that have the skills like DevOps, and they can manage and scale the services once the things are, starting to grow. So, and the whole thing is about how can I have a managed service, yeah? And then the last one is, it's sometimes now we say, I want to do a prototype, I want to do a demo, I want to do something very quickly, a proof of concept, but I want to run this in the cloud. So it's also, how can I make those things much easier? And that's the question that I'm putting here for you guys. Now let's see if by the end of my slides we can answer that question. Good. So before talking about Cloudrun, I'm gonna do a very quickly introduction to Knative. I don't want to focus too much on Knative because the purpose of this is to see how Cloudrun implements Knative. But Knative, for those who doesn't know, basically extends Kubernetes capabilities, and that enable the developers, the DevOps, the companies to develop or deploy modern applications that are container-based, okay? Container-based. So this is the Knative public presentation. So very quickly, Kubernetes is a very mature ecosystem, pretty well used, very standard now in some companies is adopting, more and more companies is adopting Kubernetes ecosystem. So pretty mature. And then Kubernetes handles a lot of stuff. Kubernetes is the orchestrator of your containers. It knows when to kill a container, when to put a new one, the life cycle, the health, the scaling, yeah, the load balancing. Okay, I'm gonna get 50% traffic for this, 50% traffic for that other node or pod. And also it controls all of these things, login, monitoring, identity authorization, all of those things Kubernetes handles. Cool. But it's a small surface, but obviously no, Kubernetes was not prepared to do all the things. And one of the things was the serverless. So at that point, serverless was a function, yeah, and as we see before. But in Knative, Kubernetes functions becomes computing. So what I mean by that, so the whole idea of when you're doing serverless is that you don't want to have a server, okay? You want to pay only for your usage, okay? If it's cold, then charge me. I want them to be portable, and I would like to use events or have event-driven models too. Good. So, and that's when becomes the biggest challenge for the existing functions and serverless architecture. So now a lot of companies have tried to do this. They tried to create their own serverless platform, but it was individual efforts to solve some of the basic problems like routine, like auto-scaling, observability, event binding, all of these things they try to solve in their own. And that obviously create a duplication of efforts and decrease portability because now you're bound to that particular platform. So the whole idea is the Knative brings the ingredients and brings the serverless blocks for the Kubernetes platform. And this is completely open source, which is also pretty important. So as we mentioned before, Kubernetes does all the platform and all the infrastructure, okay? But Knative is more about, I want to write code, I want to create an application, and I don't want to worry about building Docker, uploading these images, deploying those services, exposing to internet, like create routers, all of that setup, login, monitoring, and also worry about the scale workload. That's what Knative is going to be focused on. Good. So Knative come with a set of primitives they call build, events, and serving, which I will talk about a little bit more. And it just solved the modern development patterns, okay? And bear in mind that this technology has been used for years for tech companies like Google, the Facebook, all of these, the Netflix, all of these companies that have been using already these technologies for quite long, yeah. And now they've become more public and open. So it's you can go on github.com Knative, and there is all the information there. So and those are the what Knative is basically it's coming with the primitives, the build, the serving, and the events, and I will talk a little bit in now. So let's go to build. So build is basically if you wanna build your image, Knative comes with a set of tools that are gonna help you to build those images for you, and you don't have to be worried because with just one command you can just build the image and push that image straightforward into your container registry, and even all of that is done as well in the cloud. Okay, this is one of the benefits. Now the serving is more about when you got an application, I want to serve that application to the public, or so anyone can access that application. So this is all about basically it's more about like exposing your service in a specific URL and port, so anyone can start to consume that service, okay? And it comes with also the traffic splitting. So if you want to split traffic between revisions, scaling up and down, the serving part manage all of these aspects, okay? And then this is exactly the how this works. So basically, you're going to have a service. This service is going to have a configuration, and then for each configuration, you're going to have a revision, and this revision is linked. It's bind to a route. So then every time you make a new change in your application, let's say you create a new container that has a new API, then you create a new revision, and that it's how you can do the traffic split. Okay, so the configuration is the desired state of the application, and the revision is pointing to the configuration of that particular container. Good. So then the eventing, it's like the possibility to do to bind events and producers and consumers between your services. And basically, if you use that, you can also do event pipelines or data pipelines between your containers, and make it as well more reusable than just a specific implementation of a binding of an event system, or if you're going to use, for example, a messaging broker. Yeah. So again, I don't want to go too deep into the Knative, okay, because that would be another talk and it will be more longer, yeah, than the time that we have today. But this is just a sneak and peek of what the Knative can do. But they have some adapters from off of the existing service brokers like PubSub or AWS SQS, things like that. Good. So now, what Knative is doing today is that you can deploy a container pretty quickly. They can auto-scale, and even they can scale down to 0. This is very important. If no one is calling your container, your application, it can go to 0. And it's going to be completely automatically managed. Good. So if you want to know more about Knative, please, I encourage you to visit the official channels and follow the community, okay? Now, write down your questions. We will go on those questions in a moment, okay? Now, Cloudrun. So Cloudrun basically is the implementation of Knative from Google, okay? And it's a completely fully managed platform, okay, that can scale your containers automatically. They have 2 ways of running Cloudrun. You can run Cloudrun. You can run Cloudrun in an existing Kubernetes cluster in GCP in Google, or you can do it in a completely fully managed way, which is you don't have any Kubernetes cluster. You completely abstract from that, and that's the flavor that I found pretty interesting for today. Good. So now, what are the most important features? I will say is the no infra management, because as I say before, I don't want to manage a Kubernetes cluster. I don't want to set a Kubernetes cluster. I don't want to install Knative in a Kubernetes cluster. Yeah, but I don't want to have machines virtual machines, like turning on all the time just to keep my cluster alive. I don't want that. I just want to pay for the usage. If you call this API, then charge me, yeah? And then also all the security aspects as well. I would say that's the most important thing. Now, what are the features are important? The other features are the Cloudrun uses existing technologies like containers, Docker containers. So as long as it's a standard Docker container, it's okay. And as long as it's HTTP traffic and it listens on the port 80, you can deploy on Cloudrun. And it's a very simple developer experience because you just need to deploy an image, fast auto-scaling. We have seen demos of scaling thousands of images in a matter of seconds. Yeah, it's redundant. As soon as something happens with that container, Cloudrun will pull a new one automatically for you. So it's completely redundant. It comes with as well with logging and monitoring out of the box, and also it can help you to process any web traffic as well. And it's built on Knative. Another thing that is important and I found very useful is that they offer HTTPS certificates and HTTPS URLs. And you can also have a custom domain. That's very useful too. So that's it. That's the question that I was trying to ask before. So I think Cloudrun, it's one of the answers for running serverless apps in the cloud in an easy way, because you can run any language, any library, any binary. You see, you can build, oh, I don't have support in let's say, GCP for .NET. Doesn't matter. Write your container, put it a Docker container, and then you can deploy in Cloudrun. Doesn't matter the language. Doesn't matter. It's completely standard, and you use pay per use. Good. So now, other use cases of Cloudrun, you can do website, you can do REST APIs, you can connect with existing applications and do back office apps. You can also connect with, obviously, other Google APIs or any other APIs. Also, you can also do asynchronous microservices. So, for example, let's say that example of I'm gonna take a picture and I'm gonna send that picture into a queue. I'm gonna process that. You can send that into a Cloudrun container, process the data, and then return some information, send to another queue. You can do any kind of data transformation, or even generating documents like generating a PDF or generating invoices, anything like that. You can just, as long as you have a container, you can send messages as well to those containers and wake them up and then do the process. Good. So now we're gonna see a couple of examples of these use cases. I'm gonna show you how you can build pretty quickly a website with Cloudrun and use a standard traditional like LAMP architecture, Linux, Apache, PHP, and MySQL. So for this example, just give me here. I'm gonna share my screen again, but not the presentation. Yes. So for this example, I created previously a database in MySQL for WordPress. I have this code here, which is basically I got a Docker file that is gonna take the latest WordPress with PHP and Apache. I'm gonna expose that port. I'm gonna do certain things here, like because I need to connect to the database that is in cloud, I need to connect to using the Cloud SQL proxy. Sorry, and I'm gonna copy these plugins here, and I'm gonna put it in the container, because remember, the containers are ephemeral. So when you restart this container, there's not gonna be any plugins or themes if you have them copied before. So it's completely ephemeral. And then I'm gonna expose that endpoint here, which is the one that is gonna start my cloud proxy to connect to the database. There we go. So now I'm going to I've just got an account here of a GCP. This is Cloudrun. I don't have any services, okay? And I'm just gonna say build and deploy. This is a very quickly script that is gonna do two things. It's gonna do build summit, which is the build AP, the build part of the Knative or Cloudrun. And then I'm gonna do, what's gonna do is basically that's gonna create an image of my container, and it's gonna upload it automatically into the Google Container Registry. If I go here, Container Registry, and I'm gonna see refresh. There we go. Let's give it a second. Yeah, and it's starting to. It's gonna take a few seconds. Yeah, and once that image is completely built and pushed, it's gonna appear on my container registry. Yeah, and then the second part, what's gonna do is it's gonna use as well these APIs to the gcloud command to create a new service in Cloudrun, and it's gonna be open. It's gonna connect with this database, and it's gonna have maximum 2 instances. So now let me just refresh here. As you can see here, this is the new image. That's the image that I just created. Yeah, and it's a standard, Docker container. Cool. Now, if I go back now, what I'm doing here now is if I go to Cloudrun, now a new service is being created, which is the WP, is the WordPress service. And this is going to connect with the MySQL database that I previously created. As you can see here, it comes with a standard login and monitoring, right? And it's going to create a new revision, okay? And this revision, as you can see here, it is linked to a YAML that basically use the components of Knative that you can deploy in your Kubernetes cluster. But this is completely abstract. Now, I also previously created a custom service, a custom domain, just to have a more natural URL. And now, if I go and I do HTTPS dev encuentra tu radio, which is the name of my domain, this is going to start the, sorry, let's say dev dot, there we go. This is going to start the WordPress, and now we got a WordPress installation. Yeah, I'm going to say test works. No, it's a admin. That's going to be the password. Just put it admin just in the meantime, just to make it work. And .com, and then I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come on, where you? Yeah, there we go. And that's going to install the WordPress, and there you go. I'm going to have a new WordPress with a standard theme. Yeah. Now you can ask yourself, can I do more like complex applications? Yes, you can. So for example, what I'm going to show you very quickly, guys, I got another application here that I was doing just an API in Java, and in this case, in the pipeline, I'm using Jeep. Jeep is a plugin for building images and push the images straightforward into a container registry. And in my POM file, I got the configuration in Java. And then in my Bitbucket pipeline, when I do a commit, I just get the credentials for GCP, and then I can just run the test and push that. Now, the advantages of doing this is that, you remember there were some questions about, I remember some people was asking about, it is possible to test serverless. Well, yes, because this is a Java application, and I can run this application completely on my own, locally. And I can just do integration tests here, and then write tests, and then run these tests as well in a pipeline pointing to a Docker container. So you have completely freedom of do all of these things. And this will be the case of a Java UI. Now, if I deploy this UI, this API, and I'm gonna test it, I'm gonna call this API, okay, which is now in the cloud. And look, it's now serving the API from the cloud, and it's working pretty fast. Maybe now it's sleeping. Let me just see. There we go. At some point, yeah, it is responding. So that was more what I want to try, what I want to show you guys today. Now, let me just go back to my presentation pretty quickly. So yeah, you can do REST APIs with Java. You can do or any other language, not a problem as well. And yeah, guys, if you have any other questions, or let's go on the QA part, and I'll be glad to help you and answer those questions.
Edgar, thank you very much. I again really enjoyed that. Thanks very much for your time putting the presentation together, etc. I think there was one question or sort of comment that I saw coming through from Lee, who was just querying. He said that he thought there was an extension for Cloudrun in Visual Studio Code, which Rich confirmed as Cloud Code is the extension. Had you had any experience using that, or anything you wanted to add on that, Edgar?
Haven't done too much development on .NET platform. I've been mostly on the Java, and now recently in Python and Node.js. But because this is a standard, there's nothing to stop you to create your microservice in .NET and just deploy that container into Cloudrun or any other, or in any other Kubernetes cluster run having support for Knative. That's the beauty about this is, as long as you have a container that is exposed to port 8080, port 80, and serve anything, you can do whatever you want.
Interesting. Okay. I saw as well, Armindo was questioning, is Knative an alternative for those who want to do on-prem serverless?
That's a good point, and I wrote that question. Yes, exactly, because bear in mind, if you are on premise, you can have 10 nodes, 10 big machine servers, have a cluster of Kubernetes installed there, and then you enable Knative on that cluster. There we go. Now you can deploy containers into that Kubernetes cluster, and if no one is using those APIs or applications, they go down, scale down to 0. And you can share resources more effectively on premise. Yes, you can. Not a problem. I don't. That's a very common scenario, and that you can use serverless as well on premise.
Nice. Okay. I was going to, Mark, I didn't know whether you wanted to join us again. I knew you were rather looking forward to Edgar's speech when we were talking before. Was there anything that you wanted to query or even add?
No, I mean, actually, no, I mean, I did kind of ask Edgar if I could ask a couple of questions, but actually he's covered them now, the second time around. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. I'd really echo what Edgar's saying about testing. So even with your normal Lambda APIs, then it's a Node API locally. It's a JavaScript application. It doesn't matter whatever language you're used to writing in, however you normally test it. If you're running serverless like I am, then if it's a supported language, then you test it exactly the same way as if it was a Node server. And obviously, with what Edgar's saying, then you test it exactly the same way you always have done with your normal applications. With that information. So,
for example, a pretty common pattern, microservice pattern, is to split your microservices in different microservices. So you can easily have APIs in maybe in Python or .NET, in Go, in Java, wherever. Then have another a UI, for example, running in Node.js, calling those APIs, and you can as well run that in Cloudrun, not a problem. And it's going to be a Node.js or Apache server when it starts. It's going to take maybe a few seconds, and that the whole idea as well is to make them very lightweight, so they wake up pretty quickly. Okay, and also bear in mind that they're ephemeral. Okay, so for example, in the example of the WordPress application, I create a CDN to upload all the resources. So if you load a picture, in your blog, you don't want to lose that picture. But when the container disappeared, no one is calling the container disappear. Now, when you visit the website again, a new container is created, and that new container is going to load the pictures from the CDN that is actually having a load balancer into a bucket. That is the same in Java. The database is separated. You can have a database in Postgre, in any language, in any database vendor, and Java can consume the data from your database. It's completely ephemeral, and that's the way to go. That's the way to go.
I actually did have one question. That was one thing I meant to ask. Can you attach volumes at launch?
No. You don't have persistence in these kind of containers, because that's not the way to go. The whole idea is that they can get destroyed because you don't have persistence in that container. You don't have. Yeah, that's why you need to figure out. So if you want to store data, then you need to figure out other ways to store data, maybe through buckets, through databases, or any kind of database, okay? And also, if you're going to run asynchronous calls, so for example, let's say I got an email service or a PDF generator, okay? What you can do is, or you want to do a batch process, yeah? You want to you need to wake up that service first, if it's a batch, and you can use cron scheduler to wake up those services. It's just by calling the endpoints, the API, to wake up that service. And or also you can use PubSub in Google to send a message, okay? And that message basically will be in the queue, and then it will hit an endpoint in the container, and then when the container is awake, then the message will be consumed. Exactly.
Does make sense. Yeah, Hassan added definitely no persistent volumes. They're event-based containers. Doesn't make sense to have something persistent. So I guess
good. So just that's for me. If you want to share your experiences with Cloudrun, serverless, Knative, please let me know. Contact me on my, you got my details, guys, and I'll be glad to, share my experiences too. I think it's a very powerful technology, and it's for me, the most important thing is now I develop locally, with containers. I have my Java application or whatever I develop locally, pointing to a Docker container, a database, and I do everything locally. And then when I push, I run testing, integration tests in the cloud, in Bitbucket pipelines too. And I know they work. And then everything is pushed and deployed in the cloud. It's the experience as developer. It's much, much, much better.
Nice.
Thank you, guys.